What if I told you one of the most important men in Christian history was not one of the 12 apostles? He didn't walk on water. He wasn't at the center of the spotlight. He wasn't even among the chosen 12. And yet, without him, the story of Jesus might never have reached the world the way it did. He was rejected. He failed publicly. He was dragged through the streets until his body gave out. And centuries later, his remains were stolen in one of the boldest religious heists in history. This is the story of Saint Mark, the writer, the missionary, the martyr, the lion. Who was Mark? His name was John Mark, a young man from Jerusalem. Not a fisherman, not a tax collector, not a political rebel. Just the witness. His mother's home became a meeting place for early Christians. A safe house. Some scholars believe something astonishing. When Jesus was arrested in Gethsemane, there was a young man who fled into the night. Terrified. Alone. Only one gospel mentions that detail. The Gospel of Mark. Many believe that young man was Mark himself. Imagine that moment. Torches in the darkness. Soldiers shouting. Disciples scattering. And a young man running for his life. Fear could have defined him. But it didn't. Mark later became a close companion of Peter. Yes, that Peter. Bold, impulsive, fearless, and flawed. Imagine sitting across from Peter by candlelight, hearing him describe the storm on the sea, the day he walked on water, the moment he denied Jesus, the empty tomb. Mark listened carefully, and then he wrote. His gospel became the earliest written account of Jesus' life. It's short, fast-paced, urgent. The word immediately appears again and again. It feels like someone racing against time. Because Mark wasn't writing theory. He was preserving eyewitness fire. But Mark wasn't a hero yet. In fact, he failed when he joined Paul and Barnabas on a missionary journey. He quit. He left halfway. Scripture doesn't tell us why. Fear? Homesickness? Doubt? But Paul was furious. So furious that later, he refused to travel with Mark again. Imagine that. Rejected by the greatest missionary in Christianity. That could have been the end of Mark's story. But one man believed in him. Barnabas. And sometimes, all it takes is one person who refuses to give up on you. Years later, Paul wrote something extraordinary. Bring Mark with you, because he is helpful to me in my ministry. The same man who once rejected him now needed him. That is redemption. But Mark's greatest chapter was still ahead. He traveled to Alexandria, Egypt, one of the most intellectual cities in the world. Greek philosophy, pagan temples, Roman power. And into that world walked Mark, with nothing but a message about a crucified carpenter. Tradition says his first miracle began with something small. A torn sandal. A cobbler was repairing Mark's shoe when he pierced his own hand. In pain, the man cried out, "O one God, Mark saw the opening. He healed the man's hand and began speaking to him about Christ. That cobbler believed. And through him, Christianity spread across Egypt. From one wound came a church that would shape history. But success brings attention. And attention brings danger. As Christianity grew in Alexandria, opposition grew stronger. On Easter, a mob seized Mark. They tied a rope around his neck and dragged him through the streets. Stone, dust, blood. Ancient writings say his flesh tore from his body. That night, broken and bruised, Mark prayed. And tradition says Jesus appeared to him. Peace be with you, Mark. The next morning, they dragged him again, until he died. Not as a failure, not as the man who quit, but as a martyr. But the story doesn't end there. Centuries later, 828 AD, two Venetian merchants traveled to Alexandria. Their mission? Steal the body of St. Mark. Why? Because Venice wanted power, prestige, a patron saint. So they did something shocking. They hid his body under layers of pork. Muslim guards would not touch it. The plan worked. They smuggled his remains out of Egypt and brought him to Venice. Today, St. Mark's Basilica stands in breathtaking glory. And above it, a winged lion. Why a lion? Because Mark's Gospel begins with a voice crying out in the wilderness. Bold, powerful, roaring, like a lion. Mark was not one of the 12. He was not the loudest. He was not the most famous. But he wrote the first Gospel. He preserved Peter's memories. He founded one of the oldest Christian communities in the world. He proved something powerful. Failure is not final. Rejection is not the end. And you do not have to be chosen first to change history for. If Mark had let failure define him, if he had never written his Gospel, if he had never gone to Alexandria, how different would the world be today? And here's the deeper question. Have you ever felt like you weren't chosen? Like you were overlooked? What if, like Mark, your greatest chapter hasn't even begun yet? Tell me in the comments. Do you see yourself more in Peter or in Mark?